Hello and welcome back to the Casual Fan Podcast, the hardest working, most accurate, most entertaining, and above all else, the most profitable sports gambling podcast you will find on the internet. My name is Ben Holmes. You can find me on Twitter at Benz_best_bets. If you did, you'll see that I was 9-7 against the spread last week, 0-1 to start the week this week, putting my record at 9-8, which is okay, but I'm 6-0 in my primetime prop bets, and if you bet one unit on each of those, you'd have a return already after 1 week of 10.5 units. So we're up in a big way entering week 2 of the NFL this Sunday. The key to betting while the season's still in its early stages like it is right now is trust your process, trust your numbers. Don't be overly influenced by week 1. Let's start it off with the Bills minus 3.5. I prefer it at 3, but 3.5 I can live with. The Finns are gonna look to avenge their week 17 dismantling at the hands of the Bills to end last season. And rightfully so, that's the game most fresh in people's minds, but actually, if you look back at the last 4 seasons with the Buffalo Bills under Sean McDermott, Miami's only 1-7. I like the Bills for a lot of reasons, namely, I don't see them being an 0-2 football team. And I believe that they believe that they're not an 0-2 football team and they'll bounce back this week. I know that they didn't look great last week, but we may look back on the season and see that Pittsburgh were clearly the best team in the league, and that it wasn't the fact that the Bills were a bit sputtery on offense, but the fact that the Pittsburgh defense was that good. Speaking of defense though, Buffalo stymied the Steelers most of the game. They only conceded 252 yards of Pittsburgh's offense. It was a blocked punt that was the difference in the game, nothing to do with the defense. Now Miami don't have Will Fuller for personal reasons. He was suspended last week, could have played this week, but he's not going to. We also wanted to see if Tua would come into this season looking like a different player than last year. Last year, rookie growing pains, getting used to the NFL, all this. We thought maybe with a full training camp, he'd look different. To me, he doesn't. He looks like the same guy, and that's not going to be good enough to beat this Buffalo team. The Bills will establish the run early here. They don't want to play catch up. They don't want to have Josh Allen throw the ball 50 plus times like they did last week. Now, Singletary looked good last week, and the Miami defense gave up a century to Damian Harris. I still believe in the Buffalo Bills, and they'll be more than ready to play and take their first divisional game of the year on the road in Miami. Give me the Bills minus 3.5. I would probably recommend buying that half point to make it 3, but 3.5, let's go. Okay, let's plow through some more games here. The Bengals plus 2.5. This line smells really fishy to me. I would have thought after week 1 the Bengals would be favored against this crappy Chicago Bears team. So I think something's a bit off, but I thought the same thing with the Miami line last week. I thought Miami should have been the minus 3 team, not New England. I bet Miami, it worked out in my favor. I'm doing the same again. I'm all over Cincinnati. I'll probably take them on the money line as well. Now the Bengals were lucky to get away with a win last week. Granted, they were only 3-14 on third down. That isn't going to get it done most weeks. Dalvin Cook's fumble really bailed them out there. And on a personal note, Minnesota, that loss was the only loss they had in this big long parlay, and it would have been so glorious and I would have loved to have told you about it, but I digress. What impressed me most about the Bengals is that they didn't beat themselves. Only 3 penalties for 15 yards. That's leading the league after week 1. Ironically, the team with the most penalties were their opponent, the Minnesota Vikings. They had 116 yards. Many were surprised that Zach Taylor kept his job entering this season after only winning a handful of games in his 2 seasons there. But if he's going to lead the team to only have 3 penalties in the game, that's good coaching. I can't really envision betting the Bears much this year, especially while Andy Dalton's under center. Speaking about not overthinking games when a line seems out of whack, the Raiders plus 6.5. I'll probably buy it up to 7, but I don't think Big Ben should be favored by 6.5 against most teams in the league, let alone a decent team in the Vegas Raiders. I know the Raiders are on a slightly shorter week. They're on the road going across the country after a tough fought overtime victory. But give them credit, that Raiders win really impressed me. And that's with the Derek Carr, Darren Waller connection looking slightly off. Now, he still had an absolutely monstrous game, but he only caught half of his league-leading 19 targets. Just that connection with Carr, the ball was a little bit ahead or behind him sometimes. Waller's hands weren't super secure. It was kind of frustrating, but as someone who reached on Waller in all my fantasy leagues, I'm so happy with the production that they put out there, and I think that it will continue against Pittsburgh. Personally, I can see both teams winning this game. I think if they played it 10 times, Pittsburgh would win 6 of them. So the fact that I'm getting 6.5 points, sign me up with the Las Vegas Raiders all day. Now, the 2 most heavily bet on teams this week are the LA Rams, rightfully so after what we saw last week, and the Arizona Cardinals. They both looked sensational. And yet, since the line opened, both lines have actually moved down a half a point to a point. Both went from -4 to -3.5 where they're at right now. So a lot of the tickets are coming in on the teams that performed really well last week, but the sharp money and a lot of the money is coming in on the Colts and the Vikings, and that's who I'm gonna back as well. Now the Rams look great, but like I said, take it with a grain of salt. It was against the absolutely woeful Chicago Bears. The Rams were on prime time in their shiny new stadium. They were all gung-ho, but they're in for a much tougher task against this well-coached Colts team. The Colts really utilized their running backs in the passing game. Both Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines caught 6 balls. Maybe that'll keep Aaron Donald at bay ever so slightly. Probably not, but maybe. And when you look back at that last game against the god-awful Chicago Bears, the Bears actually led in time of possession and first downs. So I'm saying if the Bears can move the ball on this Rams D, then I definitely think the Colts have a good chance of putting up some points. And with the Arizona Cardinals, I'm just going to assume that the Vikings button it up in terms of all the penalties they got last week, and the Cards look different when they're not playing a legendarily bad defense like they did against the Titans. Because like I said at the start of this video, we don't want to overreact, and if this game happened as a week 1 game, the Cardinals would only be like a point, maybe a point and a half favorite because they're at home, but not more than that. So I'm not going to overreact. I'm going to take the Vikings in the points. Now the running back position is clearly the most expendable position in all of football, but the Ravens clearly missed their guys on Monday night. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the Chiefs at all. I think this year at best the Ravens are only just as good as the Browns. I don't really think that they're better. And the Chiefs found a way to beat the Browns even when it looked like they weren't going to. Usually the Chiefs line is super inflated. That's why they only went 8-11 against the spread last year, including the playoffs. But I don't see this as an inflated line at all. I like the -3.5. That's a very reasonable price to pay for Patty Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce against Lamar, Mark Andrews, and a bunch of bums. And the last game I'll talk about in this video, although like I said, you can find all picks for all games on my Twitter account, is the San Francisco 49ers -3 against the Eagles. The Niners should have won the last game going away, 15, 20 plus points. It was much closer than it should have been at the end, which is classic Kyle Shanahan. To be fair, he has a track record of letting teams back into games, as we know. But I think they'll be dominant this season. We saw how great the NFC West was, and I think the Niners will win the NFC West. And while the Eagles played well, give them credit, not many people saw that. Matt Ryan looks to have a long season ahead of him. He looks to have the kind of season where halfway through, he's gonna make up some ghost injury just to go away. I didn't believe in Philadelphia's coach last week. I didn't believe in Philadelphia's quarterback last week. And I'm not gonna let one game against an average at best opponent in the Falcons sway me. Now, if they do it against the Niners and Nick Bosa and that crew, that'll be different. But for now, Niners -3 for sure. It might be the lock of the week for me. That's all for now, folks. Just a taste of a handful of picks that I'm riding this week. I post all my picks to Twitter at Benz_best_best. They'll be posted tomorrow morning. Stay tuned for that. And the red hot prime time props plus 10.5 units already. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Casual Fan Podcast on YouTube. Follow the Twitter account and the Instagram account as well. And you're especially not going to want to miss Pat Struthers breaking down the return of the NHL. That's coming soon, but for now, it's football, full steam ahead. Have a wonderful Sunday. Good luck. Let's go.